All right, everybody, welcome back into another episode of Stadium Seat Sports. As always, I'm Coop here with my partner and co-host Kriv. Today, we're going to be recapping the biggest game of this past weekend, which was number 4 Ohio State traveling to Happy Valley to take on number 3 Penn State. And moving forward, guys, one of our plans here is going to be to kind of do our recap videos on Sundays, pretty much the day after most of those games. Obviously, you have your occasional Thursday or Friday night game. That's going to be, hopefully the goal and the plan moving forward. But this week, we're just going to recap this game. We talked about several others in our preview video last week, but this one had the most implications, not just for this weekend, but, for the rest of the season here for college football. So, Kriv, I'll throw it over to you first. Get your thoughts on this game in general and on, kind of both teams, trajectory coming out of this game. And then I'll give you my thoughts.
So obviously this game had a lot riding on it for both Ryan Day and James Franklin. The knock on both of them was they can't win a top 5 game. And true to form, I feel like James Franklin kind of did what he does best and not win this game. Now, with that being said, though, I truly think Ohio State dominated this game despite the score. And they stepped up on both sides of the ball in the trenches, especially when they needed it most. But a few things stood out to me. Number one, Penn State did not score an offensive touchdown, which is incredible. I think they had multiple red zone trips, no touchdowns. Obviously, the goal line stand late in the fourth quarter. I mean, that is unacceptable from a Penn State perspective. But for Ohio State to step up in those positions, whether it be the goal line stand or Igbinosun having that incredible interception in the end zone, those are the kind of things that catapult a team and give them confidence to go out there and do that again. So huge confidence boost for that Ohio State defense. On the other hand, I was shocked how good Ohio State's offensive line played. Obviously, down to their third string, so to speak, left tackle. It was just Donovan Jackson kicking out the left tackle. Hinsman moving to left guard, who hasn't really played much all year, but he was the starting center last year. And of course, they did help here and there with Jackson giving some chips from the tight ends, running backs, whoever it might be. But they stepped up big time, and there was a physicality in Ohio State's run game, especially late in that game and on that last drive, that is something you have not seen from Ohio State since probably, I want to say like 2019 season with J.K. Dobbins, his last year there. So that physicality has been missing for quite some time, and it showed up again. And for Ohio State, I know you might have Zen coming back from his injury. You can't put him back out there. The way that line looked, you have to let it ride. Maybe Donovan Jackson's out of position, but that line seemed to be best at their best with that assortment of guys out there. So they have to stick with that. I thought Will Howard played relatively well. Obviously, he had that pick 6 on the opening drive, but honestly, that was a really good play by the Penn State defender there. He kind of just read the play perfectly, jumped the route. He wasn't fooled at all. It was more a great defensive read and play than it was necessarily a poor decision by Will Howard. He went to the guy it was designed for, but it was an outstanding defensive play. Of course, for me, going back to the run game, it was the timely quarterback runs that really made the difference for Ohio State, and that's also been missing in years past. Obviously, Kyle McCord wasn't going to do that. C.J. Stroud, great quarterback, but he notoriously said he's not a running back. Will Howard, 12 carries, only 24 yards, but a lot of those yards were super timely, especially on that last drive. Quarterback power run to the left. I think it was Judkins or Henderson completely annihilated the outside backer and got that first down easily. There was just an intensity that Ohio State seemed to unlock. Maybe it wasn't the cleanest game. They had so many chances to be up by more points. The Will Howard fumble going into the end zone. I mean, there's very small plays that were taking place where this game would have looked way different. And I know Penn State fans like to point out some questionable flags here and there. But really, if you watch the game in its entirety, Ohio State was just a better team. And I don't want to take. I know James Franklin loses these games a lot. Maybe you could say his goal line play calling could have been a little better, but I mean, you could just see it. So yeah, I thought Penn State just same thing. Receivers didn't do a whole lot. Run game was disappointing. I think Tyler Warren's an absolute stud, and I think Penn State's still a pretty good team. And if they can just figure out the passing game at all, it's going to be a different team. And we've said that for years. So we'll see what they can do. They're very much alive for the playoffs. Still, I mean, a one-score loss to Ohio State at home as your only loss is pretty damn good. So, with that being said, I think Ohio State should be the number 2 team in the country. And if they can win out, they're going to have a rematch against their only loss. And I kind of like the way they're trending.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think you hit on a lot of great points. I don't even know if it's a disagreement. I'm going to say that I think Will Howard probably played his worst game that he's played in an Ohio State uniform. With that being said, I'm not sitting here telling you he played terribly. I just think he had his worst game in an Ohio State uniform, and yet Ohio State still found a way to win this game. And that was what was most impressive to me. Like, I'm more impressed with Ohio State in this game than I am disappointed in Penn State and James Franklin. Because Ohio State, and again, that pass, the pick six, that's not all on Will Howard. The Penn State defender just made an excellent read and a great play. Like, you were correct. That was the play call. That was the play design. Howard didn't see the guy, but the guy also just made an incredible step up and, jumped the route and took it to the house for Penn State's lone touchdown in that game. So I'm not sitting here, telling you that Will Howard played poorly. Like, I think that he willed this Ohio State team, and that's one of the things that I love most about Will Howard for this Ohio State team. He's not the most elite of elite quarterbacks, but the guy does not get the deer in the headlights look. Like, he faced adversity in this game. He's faced adversity in other games, not just at Ohio State this year, but throughout his career, Kansas State. Like, he just always has like the eye of the tiger look on his face rather than a deer in the headlights. And that's got to be so encouraging for Ohio State. Doesn't mean you're going to win every game, because obviously they suffered that 1-point loss in Eugene against Oregon. But you don't have a quarterback that when the times get tough kind of crumbles or succumbs to the moment. Like, he rises up to it in a lot of ways, or he's going to do everything he can to rise up to it and bring the rest of the team up with him. So, like, them being down 10-0 within the first 5 to 8 minutes of that game, I can't remember exactly when that transpired, because Penn State did go on a long, sustained first drive that took like 7 minutes off the clock or something like that. But for them to come down from 10-0 and ultimately win this game 20-13, but they could have won this game 28-10, 28-13. Like, they had opportunities to win by multiple touchdowns in this game, is incredibly impressive to me. The Will Howard fumble that went out of, essentially went over the pylon and ended up being a touchback for Penn State. Like, that's just a really freak play. It was a great play by the Penn State defender, and then it just so happened that Will Howard's leg was rising at that exact moment and hit off of his knee or his thigh and just bounced perfectly over the pylon and ended up being a touchback rather than going out of bounds at like the 1 or 2, and Ohio State just punches in the next, in the next play or two. Like, that's a big play. But Davis Igbinosa interception on the other end for Penn State is a huge play. Like, those plays offset. There was another play where I thought Will Howard threw a beautiful ball. And I don't know if it was just like a little bit of a, miscommunication, or if Jeremiah Smith got tripped up, or he just stopped running quite as hard. But had he kept going, and kind of, kept up with what was probably his initial speed, he was walking into the end zone for 7 there. Howard missed another guy wide open in the end zone, but he was under pressure in that situation. So Ohio State left a lot of points on the board, and yet somehow, in a really hostile environment, one of the most difficult venues to play in college football, down 10-0, facing a ton of adversity, came back and won. And you hit the nail on the head. Like, that last drive, to me, is very reminiscent of what Michigan did to Penn State last year. Like, they just essentially bullied them up front, let their two star backs go to work, and just essentially said, we're going to strangle you for the rest of this 5.5 minutes or so, or whatever was remaining in the game when they took over at their own 2 or 1 yard line, and did not allow Penn State, Drew Aller, and James Franklin to even get another shot. Like, I thought that was an absolutely, like, that was the most impressive thing to me coming out of that game. If you're an Ohio State fan, like, that is incredibly encouraging. And you're probably not going to learn much more over these next 2 weeks as you take on Purdue and then Northwestern. But then you got Indiana coming into your house. And I'm I don't know how to feel about Indiana yet. I want to believe that they're a very good team. I think, Kurt Cignetti is a fantastic coach. I know Michigan is not good this year. They're sitting there at 5-4 after getting thumped by Oregon, but Michigan still has some really good players. So I think we're going to learn the most about Indiana this week. Despite Michigan not being very good, it's still going to be the biggest test that Indiana has. So if like Indiana goes in there and has a similar outcome to what Oregon just did to Michigan, or they just, they win handily still, then I think Indiana can really start to be taken seriously. But their strength of schedule rather is, I think, like 103rd in the country. So I want to believe that they're very good. I think their coach is very good. I still need to just see a little bit more against an actual legit opponent before, I say that game in Columbus is going to be a top, 10, top 5 potentially matchup. Who knows what can happen over these next few weeks. But you're 100% correct. You have to stick with that offensive line makeup that you had. Like, they really bullied and controlled the line of scrimmage for a majority of the game against what is easily one of the 5 best defensive lines in all of college football. I mean, Abdul Carter is an absolute game wrecker. And yeah, he got his own. He got a couple sacks. Yep. Like, he got pressures, but the dude's just a beast. That's going to happen against, I don't care how good the offensive line is. That guy's going to get his own from time to time. They did that against a top 5 defensive line, which is just incredibly impressive to me. You are 100% correct. I think there was more pressure on Ohio State and Ryan Day coming into this game because I just think that the expectations for Ohio State and Ryan Day surpass that of what is expected of Penn State and James Franklin. That's not to say that Penn State fans shouldn't be pissed about this outcome or the last 8 outcomes against Ohio State, or the players shouldn't be pissed. Like, I just think that the administration and like the AD at Penn State, especially with this 12-team playoff, are like, well, we might not beat Ohio State or Michigan on a given year, but we might go 10-2, 11-1, make the 12-team playoff, get an opportunity to host a home playoff game, and that's good enough for us. I don't personally think that that's good enough for Penn State. I think that they're a really proud program. I think they're one of the best, 10 programs historically in college football. Easily, in my opinion. I think their fan base should expect more. I just don't necessarily think the administration and the AD expect more, and I don't expect there to be any outcome or fallout from James Franklin dropping this game again, because it's just become the expectation. And I think, and it's unfortunate for Penn State fans, because I do think that they should strive for more. Like, yeah, you might not go 6-2 against Ohio State in 8 games, or even 4-4, but I don't know, 3-5, 2-6 at minimum. Like 0-8 is just, you've got dudes all over that team. You got blue chippers everywhere. Tons of NFL talent is littered amongst that program, and you've lost 8 straight. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, and I think for Penn State, they're at a crossroads, but unlike in years past, the new expanded playoffs is probably going to give them an opportunity to actually play on the big stage.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Yes, James Franklin has not come through. But there's, for the first time, this loss to Ohio State that has happened pretty much every year has not ended their season or their championship hopes. And
very true.
If anything, they went out, they might be hosting a game in the playoffs. And I know we talk about how that's the toughest place to play. I mean, Urban Meyer even said that's a tougher place to play than LSU. Imagine that stadium for the playoffs in like a winter type environment, and some southern team or something has to come on up. Yeah. It's going to be unbelievable. And I don't know if they have the dogs to go all the way or anything like that. But I do know if they have one game and that playoff game's at home, they're gonna put up a huge fight, and they could definitely win a playoff game this year. So
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
it's not the season's not lost. James Franklin can still redeem himself, but he does have a lot of doubters, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and I think look, and I'll kind of end my take on this game with a couple of points here. Like, I think that this was a huge program win for Ohio State, and I don't mean that in the sense that they don't beat Penn State pretty much every year. I mean, this is 8 straight. We already touched on it here earlier in this video in this segment, but I want to see, because Ryan Day said post game, he said a lot of stuff, but he said post game, this signature win, this top 5 win, he thinks is going to springboard this program and this team the rest of the way. And I want to see, because Ryan Day was 0-5 against top 5 teams. He had a lot of pressure, on his shoulders, being the head coach at Ohio State and not getting the job done, nearly to the standard that Ohio State football holds for its players and for its coaching staff. And I want to know if he got the proverbial monkey off of his back, so to speak, because it's not like he's gotten blown out in these top 5 matchups. A lot of them, outside of like that 2020 national championship game against Alabama, like the Georgia game in 2022, the Oregon game this year, like a lot of the Michigan games, like those got away in the end in terms of like points. Some of them were like double digits, but like the games overall were close. So it's not like he's been far off. So I want to see if this was kind of like the proverbial monkey getting off of his back, and now he just coaches much more relaxed, and he doesn't have to be tight with everything because he's like, I've got to be perfect to get this signature victory to like make this fan base, this program believe that I can still get the job done, because I think he is one of the best coaches in college football. I still want to believe that, and this win was a big step in that direction. And I'll just close it out with this. I think the MVP of this game for Ohio State, in my opinion, was Chip Kelly and his play calling. I thought like this game showed me why Ohio State brought Chip Kelly in. He exploited Penn State's weaknesses on defense to a T. It was a beautiful thing to see. So we're both on the same page. Ohio State's trending upwards. Penn State's not necessarily trending downwards. They've still got a lot to play for this year and could very easily be sitting there 11-1 at the end of the year, hosting a playoff game come the 12-team playoff here. So really great game. Awesome to watch. Drop us your thoughts, like, comment, let us know what you guys think of both of these teams and programs moving forward, and we'll catch you on the next one.